Hi, this is Cobb, and with Session 3 of the training series for the Stewardship Mapping Application on the Georgia Forestry Commission. In this session, we're going to use the Web Map Viewer environment to make some customizations to the map elements in preparation for the final map production. So, customizing things like symbology, labels, and performing some analysis to get some information that we may need about this tract and about these stands. So in the previous two sessions we imported data into our stewardship tracts layer database from KML and QPublic, and then we used the same data to create a blank stands layer and to divide that into our individual stands within the tract. So for this session, we're going to be moving over to the Web Map Viewer from the application. This is the application, which is based on the web map, but it is you could think of it as a shell which contains the base web map and all of the data that the web map contains, but just serves to extend the functionality of it a little bit with some other tools and functions for our custom workflow. So some of these functions are actually available in the Web Map Viewer environment, and that's where we're going to be working now. So in the application, there's a link right here that says Go to Common Layers. If you click that link, it will open the web map in the Web Map Viewer, which, as I said, is this is what the application is based on and what it's using for all of its all of the base data, and all of the feature services are contained in either one. So if you edit some of this data, for example, delete a tract or edit the vertices, then that will be reflected in both the web map and the application. And by the same token, the app can be based on another web map that has been modified with some custom elements, and that way those modifications will be reflected, transferred over to the application interface. So the first thing that we want to do here, this is the way the web map opens up, and we can, by going to content here, looking at the layers in our web map, and they're the same, of course, as in the app, but we can locate our subject tract, which is the one that we worked with in the first two sessions, and also filter out all of the other features that may be in that layer by applying this filter. You see, it was the filter feature that shows up when you hover underneath the layer within the table of contents. And remember, we wanted to use the plan ID, which is why it's so important to include that in the attribute table, and also make sure that it's accurate, so that we can we could just type this we could type this straight in and it would work the same way, and when you click unique, it gives you every unique plan ID value within the database, so you can scroll around and locate it that way. When you apply this filter in Zoom 2, it should zoom into the tract, and you notice since this was a filter on the tracks layer, and so remember there was another track that was adjacent to this one. In fact, in the previous session we had to correct there was some overlap between the track boundaries from this feature that was over here to the east, but it's not displayed now because when we applied that filter, it limited the features that are displayed to the ones that meet that query criteria, which was the plan ID of 18611. So we need to do the same thing for all the features we're using in the map. We'll have to apply these filters through the web map viewer to make sure that our final map product only contains features that pertain to that particular tract that we're working with. So you see that these are the only ones contained now, 18611, and what that does is only displays and filters out all the features that do not have that tract ID number, which corresponds to the plan ID number for stewardship plans. So after we filter our features, that's a very important part of it, and we can also do some sort of subjective kind of customization to the layers within the web map environment. For example, we can adjust the transparency of the stands layer. That's something that you might commonly want to do if you feel like that too much of the base map content is not visible, or if the stand divisions you feel like they're not clear enough, then you can decrease the transparency and make those show up a little better. Also, you can change the symbology of your stands layer. So you don't want to modify this field here. This is what the layer is symbolized on. So we've made a thematic map symbolized on this type field. And if you modify that, it will cause a lot of problems later on if you need to edit or create new stands or what have you, because this is the field that the feature template is based on. So for editing things through a web interface, it requires a feature template, and so you really shouldn't modify this, but you can modify within the layer symbology. You can modify, for example, the color of any of these. You see this one turned an orange color for higher contrast against the green. You can do that for any of the layers. And also this label, the legend label feature here is what's going to show up in the legend of your final map output. So we would like to, and this is editable, so we can actually add a short description as to what the stand type is, and you see how it transfers across and is included in the legend. So the reason I said short is because these legend labels, the way the panel is in the output templates, in the printout templates, is you can only hold about 14 characters. It will try to reduce the font to fit those labels into the legend panel, but beyond about 14 characters, it may not display that entry at all. So you need to come up with a meaningful way to abbreviate these label descriptions, which is why I what was stand 2 was planted pine, which is why I didn't write out the word stand in the label either. Just anything that makes it clear what you're referring to and can stay underneath that character limit. And if you don't remember which stands were which or whatever, and you can go and check this, so you see that you can see all the attribute information by clicking over here, and so you remember stand 3 was our field, and so over here for stand 3 we can edit this to be like that. And notice over here in the count field, all of these count numbers that are greater than 0, that means that you have a feature that is contained within that class. So those are the ones that you're going to need to edit the labels, because they'll be in the legend of the final map output. So anything that's greater than 0, you need to modify this label to reflect that in the legend. Stand 4 was the riparian hardwoods. And you see how these are now in the final legend in the map output in the printout. It won't include any of these classes that don't contain any features that have zeros here. You can see all of them here, but in the final one, you'll only have the ones that have features within that class. So, and then stand 5 was pine hardwood. So then now we've set up the legend output so that our printout is going to have these values for labels instead of just simply a generic stand 1 and stand 2, which isn't descriptive and informational to the customer. So when we've done that, we're going to look at in the web map environment is where you can place labels for the various feature layers that you have in your map. You see there's an option here, and we can do that. So, but for stands, a lot of times plan preparers sometimes want to put in the area for each stand and have that labeled on the map. So if that's the way you want to set up your map, you're going to need to calculate the acres for each stand. And the way we do that through the web interface is not quite as straightforward as we would like, but this is how the process goes. Is you saw that analysis button I just clicked up there, and this has various things, analyses that you can perform on the layers in your map. If you look, I'm going to select Summarize Data and Summarize Within, and you see that what's going to happen is I'm going to summarize this stands data within another layer. So since I have the tracks in place already in the map, the stands are always should be completely contained by the track boundaries because of the way we set it up. And we brought in the same data as our blank stand layer as we did for the track, so there should be it should be completely contained. And the way that we created our stands with the cut tool, there shouldn't be any topology problem as far as gaps between the stands or overlap, which would mean that the sum of all of these stands should add up to the total tract acreage of GIS. So we can use that number as well to calculate the GIS acres within the entire tract. And remember, since we have these stands filtered, the only ones that are going to show up in the table and in other words, it's just as if these were the only ones in the map, so we can work with those as a complete group within this track boundary. So we do need to change our summary acres, and this process, these analysis, keep in mind that they do create another feature layer, which is going to be stored in your content generally by default. You can create folders in your content. We'll look at that as well. But and this consumes some credits. So every time, so you see, this was 6/1000. So not a major consideration, but you do want to minimize the number of times that you run these analysis procedures to keep our credit usage as low as possible. So for the name here, we can name this, since it's specific to this tract, We can name it Monahan stand acres, and where you can, it doesn't really matter because we have our stands filtered and the tracks filtered. However, you know, we can do either way with it. So when we run the analysis, you see that it's happening here, and so like I said, it creates a new layer in your content, and so you can keep that as a reference. It's actually more or less a duplicate of the stands layer. It has all of the fields present that were in the stands, and the additional layers, the additional fields which contain the acreage information. So we'll give that a second to run, and it will be creating another layer in our map. There it is. So so what's happened here is this is a separate layer, but we need it because it contains in the table. If we open the table, we'll see that it contains these acreage values for each stand. So we can use this. We'll need to know this in the context of the plan, and we can also use these if we want to use those for labels on the stands, within the stands in the map itself. So you see a couple of things. This is a 4 decimal points, which isn't normally what we would want. That's a little too precise. And also for these tables, you see the little the asterisk icon there, and you can click that and do different functions. And so when the statistics function, we can see that what the total. So this is actually, this number here, the sum of the values, because of the way we created those stands, is going to be the total tract area in acres. So remember, it was supposed to be, according to the tax assessor, it was 230 acres, and our actual number is 228.089. So if you wanted to create a label field to use these acreage values, you may want to avoid confusion between the landowner and the assessor's office or wherever. You can just apply a correction factor to the field in a field calculation, and then also round those decimal places off in the same operation. So one of the good things about the web map viewer is they have enabled the functionality to add fields to the table within the web interface. So you remember, the reason we can do this is this layer here is owned by you, the user. You just created it when you did the analysis operation. So you can't do this for any layers that you don't own. Any of these other layers that were created by the administrator, you wouldn't be able to do this. But since we're talking about a layer that you own, that's in your content that you just created, then you can actually add a field, and you can call it stand. You call it stand acres corrected, because we're going to do that correction factor to make all of those stand values add up to the 230 acres that's listed in the assessor's office. And it's going to be type double, which means that it contains decimal parts of whole numbers. And so we can add that field, and access the data, and here's our new field right here. And so then we can calculate this field, And so you remember our total number we came up with when we added all the stand values was 222.089, something like that. So if we wanted to make our correction factor, we could add in this constant to multiply, to multiply times the rounded, see we have a round function here, value of this acres field, the original acres field that's in the table, and we'll round it to 2 decimal places. That's what the 2 is for. So we'll verify this, make sure that all of our syntax is right and everything. And then we can do the calculation. So what should happen is we should get some values over here that are similar to the other values, but just slightly increased because we wanted. Now, if we look at the sum of those values in the statistics, we can see that the total value is really close to 230 acres. So when we include these acreage is in the labels for the landowner, the customer, then it makes sense to them that the total is going to add up to their listed acreage in the tax assessor, in their property records for tax purposes. So we have this field here, stand acres correct, and we can actually, if we wanted to use this as a label field, we can click over here, try to open these properties, and go to create labels. And so remember, I said that all of the fields that were in that original stands layer were transferred over when we did the analysis for the acreage calculation. So we can use any of those fields and add text in front of that as we do, and really arrange the labeling that way. Then if we wanted to add, remember the new field is the one that's corrected and has the 2 decimal round. And then just to shore up that a little bit, we can add some more text on the end. So if we brought this up, change the text color to white, and you can bring in the halo, which is if it's a light color text, you want to use a darker halo. So so this is how you could label the stand if you wanted to, and you can use any text that you want, whatever your convention for making maps. But so this gives you the labels identifying the stand number as well as the number, the acreage in each stand. You could also alternately you could use the type label for and then it would add on the whatever you put in the when you created the stands, whatever you placed in that type label. And these have our 50 characters, so you can be a little more descriptive, except these are all having to be contained on the same line, which is a limitation of the web interface. And also, if they're too long, it gets too difficult to interpret the map. So since we're going to have a legend in the map anyway that has the descriptive information, then maybe we only really need to identify the stand number and then the acreage for this map. This is a common scenario to create the stand map. But now you notice that that the symbology for the for this layer is a little different than the stands layers underneath. So it's on top of that stands layer. And if we just want to retain the labels without having the layer in the legend or having the symbology display in the map, then we can change this. See, now this can be changed because remember, this is the layer that you created. Its only purpose is to calculate the acres within. So it's not in the overall stands layer. That's going to be a statewide compiled resource, and it doesn't require any further editing. You have the information you need. So in this case, we could change this to a single symbol type of situation, and then we can make this symbol a transparent fill and outline so that it wouldn't display in the map. So we're back to our stand map symbology, and we still have retained our labels from the other one. The other thing to do that we should do for in terms of the final map production is under these properties you can hide this because we don't really want to see this layer listed in the legend in the map output. It's really just a layer for our own purposes in order to calculate the acreage. So we can hide that in the legend, and now you notice that it doesn't show up in the layers list in the legend. So there are some others. You can experiment with this and see what works best for you. Within the confines of producing a standardized, branded map product, and there's some flexibility depending on especially when we start to prepare different kinds of maps other than just stewardship plans. Then you may need some more flexibility on adding custom elements, and let's look really briefly at that. So within this the layers in our web map, you see we have some point features, and these are just common points that you may want to add in the context of a stewardship plan. They're already symbolized, by they had the symbology imported with them from the template, and so they just have different categories. And if you wanted to add one of these to your map, you can do this through either the application under the editor toolbar. And so if you want to add one, you just click on that type of feature and then digitize it in where it is supposed to go. Or through the web map. And if you're doing just digitizing and not any more complex editing tasks like cutting or merging or autocomplete or streaming or anything like that, then it's really a better idea to do that in the web map environment, because it's as far as the whole system, the way our web server version of the application works with the cloud initialization in ArcGIS Online, it's easier for these edits in the web map to be reflected in the app that's on our server rather than the other way around. So if you have the option either way, it's probably a better idea to edit in the web map. And then when you refresh the app, of course you'll have to log in again if it's on an internal server. But then you'll see those changes reflected in the app at that point. So if we wanted to add some other features into our map, so if you want to use a standard feature that's listed somewhere in this template, then all you have to do is go to your edit mode over in the web map. The edit mode is activated by just clicking this edit button up here. And then you can select one of these features is in the feature template. It'll be symbolized this way and have this type of of labeling scheme. And you can just digitize this in. And remember, I push Control so it will snap to that boundary. So that way, if we want to just put in a road that maybe doesn't show up on the map, or that we wanted to actually include in the map for the landowner, you can see I just created that. I double clicked. You see I pushed Control at the end so it would snap to that other boundary. And remember, we need to put in this tract ID that corresponds to the tract in question. And then we could, if we wanted to, add a condition value here. It's not required. So then we'll have in our legend, then we will have a woods road in here. Now, if you wanted to, there's a couple of other layers in here. If you wanted to add a feature that we didn't have listed in the template, something custom that was on the track that you wanted to identify, we do have these two other layers, these other lines that you can enter features, and then you can actually customize those with a label and symbology. So let's say, for example, that we have say there's a spring point right here where this tree is in the field, and you wanted to identify that for the landowner. You could use this generic point and place that where it needs to be. And then you see there's a field here that says other type, so we can put whatever it is, and then the tract ID, which is going to allow us to filter the point when we as we acquire more and more of these generic points, to filter out all the ones that don't pertain to this tract. Now, so you have a generic point there that has that description in the table, and if you alright, so we're done with our editing. We have a woods road, which is symbolized from the template, and then we have a spring, which is going to be symbolized by that other type field that we entered in as being a spring. So if we look at our content and go to other points, and we can look at this, so we can symbolize this by other type. And you see that we only have one in here now, but if we were to create more points, of course, each one of these individual values in the other type field could be symbolized in a different way. And we can change the symbology by the same method we did with the stands. If we wanted it to be a blue water drop or something. You are kind of limited on your symbology working through the web, but still you can give a different distinctive symbol for each one of these features. So you see this is the new symbol, and so you can if you want to, if you're working with line and point features and you want to make it, if you have room and if you don't think it's too cluttered, you can also add labels to the features within the map as well. So this is going to show up in our legend as a spring with this symbol in the map legend, but we could also create a label with this other type field, which is where our spring is contained. You see that it was labeled there, and we can change the color, maybe to make that a little more. And we can do the same thing for the Woods Road. So if we wanted to symbolize that by the type, and of course we don't need the condition necessarily in the label. Do you see that one's labeled too right there? We can change that to a more contrasting color. No, it's not very much contrast, is it? So we can use something like that. You see it's labeled on the line here, so you could do it that way. And so then you can use these template features for lines and points, as well as the generic lines and points, the way we just did, to create the custom points or line features you may need in your map. And then, so when you get to a point where you're labeling, symbology, all of your map elements are customized the way that you think they need to be for your final map, then what we'll do is, if you look at this, so we've done all these customizations in here, but if I just close this map and then the next time I opened it, none of those changes will persist, because it'll go back to the original version of that default web map. But what I can do is, see here, when I click save, the save option isn't available because this is a map that's owned by the administrator, and so you couldn't save the map itself, but you can save it as another version. And so if you wanted to save this as Monahan FSP map, and then put a summary. It's mainly for metadata, but you see how it's going to save it in this same folder where it saved my summary layer with the acres. So this is going to be a different version of the web map that is named Monahan FSP map. So let's do that. It'll be saved in your content, and you notice the name of this map changed to whatever. And if you look in your content, each one of you as a user and publisher is going to have this page of your content, and you'll see that the web map has been saved in into your content, so you have access to that, and the current version, the modified version with all of your label and symbology and changes, all of that. So we have this map. The next step is that we're going to, in the next session, so this is the end of this session, we have our customized stand map with our labels, with our elements that everything we think we need to do this, to make this stand map reasonable in the context of a stewardship plan. And so in the next session we're going to go back to the app one more time. So the general overview is that you would start in the app to bring your data in, and then you go to the web map viewer to customize your map elements. And you save that as a new web map, and in the next session we're going to bring this web map into the app, into another version of the app, and then go through the final steps of making some last other customizations, and also the printout process. So printing out the final version of the map. So this is the end of session 3, customizing map elements through the web map viewer, and hope it helps. Thanks.